was watching an interview the other day with Noam Chomsky, who reminded the world that a key concession by Mikhail Gorbachev for the reunification of Germany was that NATO would not move an inch to the east. Well, look at where it is now. It's pretty much gobbled up most of the old Iron Curtain.
Well, Bongani, good morning, and you're right to recall Gorbachev. Putin is no Gorbachev. Putin would be recognized by Leica and Shannon in your last contest as the bully in the schoolyard. Putin wants to reassert the old Cold War zones of influence nearby. And he's playing the long game because he's going to be in power till 2036. And the Germans have real stakes because of gas, and the Americans are sounding the alarm, but they're not going to send any troops. And it does seem like overnight the backing down has occurred slightly. But it's a long game, Bolgani. This is going to go on forever.
The narrative, of course, in the West is that Putin is this bully. But on the other hand, the Russians see all of this as provocative. I mean, could you not argue that Ukraine joining NATO would be a strategic threat to Moscow, and no Russian leader, least of all this one, would accept it?
Look, who are the Russians? The Russians' voices are not being heard. I used to go back and forth between apartheid South Africa when we were supporting black leadership down here in the old days as I was a foundation officer and I was going to the Soviet Union, and I'd say, my goodness, there's corruption in both of these. They're both autocracies. You don't know what the people are really thinking. What were black majorities thinking? Well, we finally knew that they didn't like the system, and I don't know what the Russian people think, but we know that the Ukrainians voted with their protests in the Orange Revolution in 2014, and that provoked Putin to invade when his puppet Viktor Lukashenko was fled back to Moscow. This is the self-determination of the Ukrainian people. NATO is all voluntary. People join because they want to join. I'm not happy with the way in which Gorbachev's forecast was not honored, but at the same time, it's an open organization. You apply, and if you're accepted, you go in. There's no one suggesting that NATO is going to attack Russia.
Could you imagine, I mean, and it's a question I've raised before, could you imagine if it was still alive, the Warsaw Pact on the US's doorstep, I don't know, maybe in Cuba or somewhere there, or encroaching towards Mexico? Surely there'd be reaction from Washington.
Well, there sure was. When they put the missiles into Cuba, I was an undergraduate, and I remember it very vividly. That was a near-death experience. This is a local dispute. As I said, Biden is not sending troops. He's made that very clear and explicit openly, taken that off the table. This has got to be for the Europeans to resolve. My only concern is that the self-determination of the Ukrainian people, like the self-determination of the South African people, and they're both been democracies for about as long, 30 years, is not being honored. Putin is trying to run an autocracy, and he's going to repress the people of the voices of Russians. We don't know what the Russians. We see the polls, and Crimea was a popular intervention for him in 2014. But what does it get them? It's a petrol state, and the people there want economic development, and they want prosperity, and they want international engagement. That's why I'm all for the Nord Stream gas pipeline. Yep.
So let me ask you, the German Chancellor, Scholz, is off to Moscow today, meeting with Putin, apparently to warn him of severe consequences if he does invade. Is that an empty threat? I mean, surely the West has no appetite for actual war.
They have no appetite for actual war, and yes, he's a voice to be heard. But the real question is Kerensky, the head of Ukraine, going to concede on saying, we will not join NATO, we will not apply for NATO membership? That would let everybody off the hook. But this is, again, a long game, Bongani. We'll be talking about this in 2036, and I'll be 92.
Current events, developing stories.
Tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.